Yeah, thank you, Kim. Yeah. So, hi everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Photoblock development patterns presentation. Now, I could have tried to put a lot of code in this presentation. I'm going to try to keep that light and just go over a couple of concepts and just mention some things that we as a community and we as Volto developers need to look out for in the future. And yeah, basically a bunch of patterns. And one of the main things that makes Volto so attractive for us is the power of Volto blocks. And they are not just powerful, but also immensely easy to develop for. And it's a great success story in that I had colleagues that were new to Plone or didn't knew anything about Plone. They had some React training or they didn't have at all. And they were very, very productive in quite a short amount of time. And this is one of the biggest selling point of Volto, I think, in that we can scale with Plone. And just to whet your appetite, I'm gonna show you a couple of blocks to see exactly how powerful they can be. And this is one of the first add-ons, actually, like the most important one that I could have developed, in the sense that it also contributed to the adoption of Volto by our biggest client. And this is Volto Plotly charts. And Volto Plotly charts is the power of a chart editor, a really big and complex chart editor in Volto as a block. And just to quickly show it live, because a picture doesn't do it enough justice, I can go into this country fact sheet. I can just click on the open chart. I can have it connected to a data source coming from a CSV file or from an SQL endpoint, and yeah, it's like everything here is customizable, including the colors of the bars, the format of data. It's so much power you wouldn't believe it. And when I've initially shown this product to our client, it was like instantaneous adoption of Volto. Nothing else mattered. Okay, so next, sorry. What do we have? We have Volto Search Kit. And yeah, you all remember Philip's slide from yesterday. And one of the main points in that slide was that the best code is the one that you don't write. And this is a very good example of code that we didn't have to write. And this is a block that integrates with Elasticsearch. And to create this block, because it's not a generic framework right now, we had to write some code just because, but yeah, there are big plans about this search engine. But just to give you an idea of how easy it was to create this, I think it's about 700 lines of React declarative code, more or less just declare the facets, declare the indexes and so on that need to be read from the database. And here it is into production. You can use the facets, the library facets. You can use the sidebar facets. You can search with words, and it's Elasticsearch is very, very fast. And yeah, it's like a really, really good example of why it was so important for us to adopt Volto, and why Volto came just at the right time and couldn't have come earlier, because Volto will open a huge ecosystem of add-ons and of products that we can integrate in Plone with almost no effort at all, comparatively to everything else. And this is also, let's say, one of the things that I believe, for example, makes the difference between improving Volto and improving the JavaScript story in Plone Classic. With Volto, with the huge ecosystem of React extensions, which can be easily integrated, we can leave others to work for us, right? So that we don't have to re-implement all this. And yeah. And next, let's see what we have. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about our context and the things that we have right now. And it's this title. Zoe component architecture is still 100% greatness, and I hold this as very, very true. I'm a big fan of Zoe component architecture, and I think this is what makes Plone what it is right now, and a powerful content management system, system that we can all share, that we can all work on with our conflicting needs and our conflicting ideas, and we can all put our effort into it, and we can collaborate and make a great open source product. And I mean, we make fun of it, and sometimes, and we laugh of its verboseness. And personally, I think that if we would cut, for example, the multi-Plone database support in a single database, it might make our patterns like simpler, but in the end, with Volto, we can leave that let's say complexity aside, because we can just focus on the front end and just have a lot less code that needs to be written in the backend using the Zoe component architecture, and this makes it makes it easier to integrate new people into Plone projects. Yeah, and let me see. Yeah. And this is again, as part of our overall picture, as part of our context, the fact that we need configuration registries, and we need them in Plone, where we have multiple configuration registries. We have the global component registry, the local component registry. We have the configuration registry itself, and Volto on its own, it has its own configuration registry exposed as a singleton object. And there's no Zoe component architecture equivalent right now in Volto, although at some point me and my colleague Aline were discussing the fact that there are scenarios where we actually want a feature such as an adapter for Volto, and there are use cases where it makes sense. I mean, the adapter pattern is on its own a very powerful abstract concept. And yeah, to have adapters, you need to have types and concepts. And we have some types, like, for example, footer, break, and we have some concepts like the views in Volto, the widget registry. But we don't have abstract concepts that can bridge Volto. And Victor and I were discussing about introducing something called I'm guessing that they would still be more or less attached, not really generic. I don't know. who knows? We haven't actually got to really work on this, and I'm quite excited to get the time to work on it. Yeah, so Volto in itself is actually quite small. I mean, you can easily go through all the source code in 1 day, 2 days, and you can really learn it and understand it. And I encourage you all to do that. Because it's a great learning opportunity. The code is super high quality. Yeah, I mean, as with any code, there are things that you wish could be improved, but it teaches you a lot, and you can, yeah, that's like the fastest learning thing that I can recommend. And there's another thing that we have to take into considerations that when we think about the Volto horizon of things to expect is that patterns make things extendable. And without pattern, you cannot really make something extensible, or you can make a concrete thing extensible, but not you can't general being a young project, we're still discovering them. And of course, the bigger the massive developers, the wider amount of content, the wider amount of code and use cases, and these patterns emerge. And yeah, I've, let's say, brainstormed a little bit. I've expressed some of the patterns that I saw, and I'm just putting them on the table, and I'm saying, okay, we Volto developers, we have to start using these patterns so that we can also start going a bit further to make our code extend. And the first pattern, let's say, I'm going by calling them function-centered pattern, in the sense that they are something closely related to functionality, right? So we have block variations, which are default block values, let's say. Imagine that we have the case where I want, I don't know, a quote block, let's say, and I have some presets like is it red with big padding, is it smaller, is it I don't know, things like that. And right now we don't have this mechanism in Volto. It will probably be included so that we can have, if not, I mean, if not necessary in Volto, if not directly needed, at least something that's available to Volto projects. And we have block extensions, and the block extensions are templates for blocks. And a block can use a template, for example, the listing block in Volto. You can choose between album view and listing view, for example. And what I'm trying to say is that we need to make this a pattern. We need to provide functionality in Volto that points the developers to this pattern and say, hey, you can make your when you create a block, make it extensible from the beginning, and think about how it can be extended. Think about which parts of it you can make reusable, and yeah. This will make our add-on and Photoblock's story go big, and it will make it great for us as a community, because we'll be able to not rewrite code every time, but yeah, we'll be able to reuse and share our own code. We have another pattern which I call block embedding, and you have probably seen already this pattern in action. When Razvan, for example, showed the Volto grid block, it was using our block embedding pattern. We have a Volto columns block, which again reuses our block embedding pattern. And yeah, this pattern came from the idea that, first of all, when we edit inside Volto, when we edit the blocks, we are more or less writing in the equivalent of TinyMC, right? Except that all the paragraphs are on their own blocks. If we abstract the fact that each paragraph is stored as a block, then what we are looking is just a flow of text, right? So I consider this flow of information, this idea that the content inside a Volto page is more or less something that you would expect to see in a rich text area inside Plone. I consider it important, and for this we have created this Photoblock form add-on, which is just actually Volto code copied from Volto code, extracted, split, divided, and cleaned, and so on. So we took a file that in Volto is about 2,000 lines. We split them up. We made it reusable, and it can be it can serve as the basis of many other add-ons. So yeah, it's basically the block engine separate, and you can embed that block engine into other blocks, for example, and that makes it possible to make the columns, to make the accordions, to make the group blocks, and so on. And the intention is to clean up that code, to create a blocks API, to like set it in stone and push this into Volto core. Yeah, and continuing with function-centered patterns, we have block transformations, and this is a pattern that we're also thinking to integrate in Volto. And the block transformation is when, for example, you want to change the type of a block from one type to another. And for example, you could have an accordion block based, for example, with the Photoblock form framework, which stores, which sets a condition on how the internal block data should look like. And this internal block data pattern is shared among all the others, all the other users of this Photoblock form add-on. So you could change between block types. You could go from the columns block to the accordion block to the what else, tabs potentially. I mean, it's a strange transformation, but it actually makes sense in this because you don't want to create an Uber block, something that has all the functionality, or you could, but if this capability exists in Volto or will exist in Volto at some point, why not allow our ecosystem to be able to transform from one block to another, even, for example, if we lose some of the block data in the process. And for example, I've talked about one-to-one transformation of blocks from an accordion block to a columns block, for example. But we can use the same transformation, or at least I would use the same transformation to also group multiple blocks, or transform multiple blocks, because I consider, for example, the group operation of blocks. And if you have tried Gutenberg, for example, the WordPress-based editor, blocks-based editor, it kind of functions like the Volto blocks editor. That one also has this operation. And I can imagine an add-on or a feature in Volto where I can select multiple blocks and say, group them. And maybe then I would promote this to an accordion block, or promote this to something else. We want to have the same kind of usability with Volto as we do with rich text. And at some point, we lost some of this usability. And I've been working on bringing this usability. For example, the newly introduced multi-block copy-paste that was added recently in Volto is also about this. And I'm also going to show a little bit more on how, or rather, the work that we have done to make Volto a little bit more like what we are used to in rich text and TinyMC. Okay, so next pattern, we have director blocks, and those blocks are blocks that manipulate other blocks. And yeah, I'm gonna show a little bit how this helps, because it's a great thing. Actually, if you watch my 200% speed Volto Slate lightning talk, you might have got a glimpse of that. Okay, so this is a Google Docs template. I'm just gonna copy from it, and I'm gonna go here inside our Volto website, and this rich text field is actually Volto Slate, and fingers crossed that it works. I will paste, and you can see that you have to understand, Volto Slate doesn't customize anything in Volto, and by default, all the add-ons that we are working with, we don't want to customize anything in Volto. We want to use the Volto API, and I'm actually very conservative when it comes to Volto API. We try not to change it. And as an anecdote, Victor and I have a almost year-long discussion on the introduction of a couple of keywords in Volto code. So yeah, you have to. You can count on Volto code being well taken care of. And if Volto has got to version 10 right now, it's not because we like to break things easily. Anyway, so my paste succeeded, and I have multiple blocks here. And why do I have multiple blocks? Because the contract in Volto blocks is that each paragraph is its own block, and each let's say primitive of the rich text, for example, this image has been created as a Volto image block. The table here is a Volto table, and it has been reproduced from the paste. And another let's say director block, and this is something that I think it's bordering insanity. And it's like a demo of what, just having fun. Yeah, let's keep it that way. So I have this tabs block, and I can write, for example, first tab, and I can say second tab, and this is a standalone block. What it does, though, is it controls the form on screen. So you can edit in a, let's say, fake tab behavior using this block. And yeah, you can the challenge that I took, because this is a block that's mostly been done for fun, and mostly as a technology demo things. Let's see what we can do with the Volto in itself, and what we can do with the current API. So if I want to finish the current accordion, I just add another accordion here. Don't use this in production. So it's open source code, but don't use it in production. It's just something to have fun with. I didn't fill in the title. Yeah, and many thanks to my colleague Aline, who made sure that that validation is shown. Okay, so well, you can see that everything below product overview, all right? Oh, sorry, under this stays, because that's where I put the other tabs block. So it works. Okay, so let's see what else we have. We have as a pattern presets of multiple blocks, and you can imagine, for example, I mean, you've seen Aline's layout presentation, and you saw that you can define a content type, and you can set a set of blocks that would be the initial layout for that content type. But I can also imagine, for example, having a palette or a palette of blocks that you can produce at the global level, and you can just pick and say, okay, maybe I want, I don't know, like, yeah, let's for example take one of these. Like I want something with 3 columns, or I want a chart on the side and some text on the other side. So this would be not a single block. This would be not something specific to a content type, but something that you could potentially have site-wide, and you could potentially just drop in your form, and that would be kind of like the equivalent of dexterity behavior, but specific to blocks. Okay, so what do we have? Block development patterns, and one of the main patterns that we have used in the last year when we developed blocks was this client-side forms, and I have explored it a little bit in the training, in the Volto add-ons training, and I think it's one of the main patterns that we have, let's say, developed in the last period of time. And why is it important? Because once we express our blocks in terms of schemas, then we can also make the blocks extensible, and we can have blocks that are reusable because of this, and you don't have to rewrite, and you don't have to create every time new blocks. And I mean, like, probably my biggest pleasure is to create a new Volto block, and well, this would make it would make the fun a little more rare, but yeah, we need to have this. And that schema for blocks, we derive it from the Plone REST API JSON schema. I mean, we use the same schema. We allow ourselves to enhance on that schema. We are also thinking to allow passing directly a component here, and but more or less, I mean, the main idea is that we want to express our block components in terms of schema, and then we use this schema to derive our block editing forms. And to use that schema and generate the block form, I mean, and this is not specific to blocks for block forms. You can use them anywhere. We use this inline form, and if you look in the EA add-ons, you see it everywhere. This inline form being used, and I think as a pattern, it's important to use it everywhere, because it forces us to express our needs in terms of widgets, and widgets are by default reusable. And another one thing to be aware of is that our schema is you know, we are living in React world, and React means reactivity, and we don't have right now a defined way to like to bind widgets to data, to do all the complicated wizardry that we're doing in dexterity, in autoforms, in Z3C forms, and everything else. But what we have is reactivity, and that means that if we're mutating the schema, automatically our components on the screen will update, and they will match the mutated schema. And for example, and that means you can leave the schema to be as dumb as possible, so that it's easily readable, it's easily changeable, and just move the code that makes it specific, move it close to the actual block implementation. And this is shown by having the table schema instantiated, and then just yeah, mutating whatever we need. And yeah, back to the idea that we express everything in terms of form. That makes everything, every type of interaction, we want to also express it, or not every type, but as many as possible. We want to express them as widgets. And we have, I mean, probably, maybe this code should be moved to Volto core. Probably we should add some other widgets to it as well. Right now there are 4 widgets, I think. One is shameful, so I'm not gonna show it to you. But the other three widgets are really nice. And this is the inline list widget. You can think of it as a data grid field inside Plone. So you can define a schema for one row or one object, and with this widget, you can instantiate that schema. So basically, create multiple rows, and you can change the values for them. And if you want to explore this, what you can do with this thing, which is great, I think, and yeah, I love it. You can reference the Volto addons training, and it's online material. Yeah, so even if you haven't participated, even if you don't have the patience to sit 8 hours through it, I wouldn't have. Just go to the text information and yeah, see how it's done. Then we have inside mapping widget, and again, back to the idea that everything is a widget. What we're yeah, I shouldn't let this thing trouble me. So back to the idea that everything is a widget. We have a mapping, like I want the agroecosystems to use the color yellow, and I want the forest to use the color whatever, cal or whatever color it's that. So we are mapping keys to values. And another one, which is a little bit, let's say, stranger, I call it an object by type, and you choose the type of information that you want with it. And we use it, for example, in Volto Slate for the link implementation, and it makes sense there. And let me show it, for example. Yeah. So, like here, if I click on the link, then I want a type of information to attach there. And yeah, sure, we have the possibility to make a smart widget, like just to allow the editor to put something inside, and we can guess what it is for sure. Just but here, for example, we say, okay, you can do either an internal link, so that information looks in a certain shape, or an external link, right? Or an email address. And based on the choice of the tab that you have done, then the shape of the object will be different. So So yeah. Next, widgets. Yeah, this is an important thing. To make a widget a proper widget, they should follow a widget protocol, and the on-change thing is like really straightforward. But if you're developing new widgets, try not to mix the block properties if possible, because that would make the widget hard to integrate afterwards. Okay, so another development pattern that we have, let's say, understood or extracted, and we see that it's really important, is that of the compose behavior. And this is something that React provides by default, and it's like the main thing of React. But when you start with React, maybe you don't realize what you have, and you don't understand what power it gives, and you don't understand how to use it. So I want to stress the importance of this pattern, like because it leads to smaller components, reusable code, easier, better testing, and code that is easier to maintain. And how you use it, it's this line of code. For example, I would have two behaviors. Let's call them with block extensions, with file data, and these are taken from the training, from the Volto addons training, and we wrap them around the table block component that's provided as an example here. And to understand the higher order components, and to understand how these things work, these with block extensions, you have to understand the concept of higher order function. I mean, we as Python developers traditionally use them. We can pass functions as arguments, and we can return functions, and the decorators, for example, we use them all the time. Not so much in actually we've started to use them with the Zope component architecture providing some registration as decorators. So yeah. And so moving on to understand how the higher order components work, we have to understand the basic concept of composing functions. So for example, if I have a function called add and takes x and y as parameters, and it returns those two parameters added, then we can make a function called add1, where we kind of like hard coding one parameter, right? And next, if we move, for example, to a React component, really basic, we can call it footer, and it just does footer stuff. And then we say, hey, I want a particular type of footer, and we're just declaring a new component that just uses the footer but hard codes one of the properties and so on. But if we take the concept of wrapping a component inside a particular behavior, we arrive at the higher order component concept. So now we can do with red background as a generic concept or as a generic functionality. It wraps a component, any component, we call it wrapped component, and that's a convention. And yeah, we will return the wrapped component. And in this case, we no longer hard code the component, the footer here. We received it as an argument. And yeah, I mean, these are some pseudocode implementation. I don't think we need to spend too much time on them. But yeah, imagine that you have a higher order component or a behavior that fetches data for you, so you can focus, or you can keep this code separate into a separate piece of information, a piece of code that doesn't that you don't copy paste around in your blocks. You don't you can really focus on making this as tight as possible and as best as possible, bug free and so on, so that it's easy to reuse in your other code. And for example, another pattern or another higher order component would be the extensible blocks pattern. And this one, for example, you would just wrap your block and it will inject, it will look up for extensions that are registered for this type of block. Like so basically we import the blocks registry from the config, and then we say, hey, the extension is blocks config by my block type, so I need to be able to wrap the block. Yeah, so then I find whatever extension I need, and I then inject them as property to the block. Okay, so another really important concept to understand, and this I think it's a key concept to understanding or to widening understanding of Volto, is the fact that blocks are extensible and components are extensible, and there's this add-on called Photoblock style. I'm going to show it in action right now. That doesn't really need trick in that it wraps all the Volto blocks. It doesn't customize anything about Volto, but it is able to provide styling for any Volto block. And for example, so basically, let's I don't know, let's take this table. I'm not sure if it would work, but Volto block style adds one button here, the style palette. Not the best place. Maybe we will improve this, but basically it provides that button, and with this button you can, yeah, it doesn't work for tables because they hard code the background. Let's try it with something else. Yeah, and you can, for example, make text bigger, smaller, and this is something that you can reuse as a generic styling framework for any block. And there is a framework inside it. So here, for example, it's empty, but you can register register style, like, and I have it integrated, for example, in these style sheets. And for example, yeah, this block and the background on it is created by this block style. So you can have a palette of